Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Ian Kavat. This could be one of the first recordings of the North Korean soldiers sent to fight for Russia that Ukraine now says are on the front line in Russia's Kursk region. According to the video, they've arrived at a military base in Sergivka, Vladivostok in eastern Russia. The North Korean troops are believed to include Pyongyang's elite stormtroopers. The Pentagon estimates a total of 10,000 soldiers have been deployed so far, whereas Kiev and South Korea estimate 11,000 soldiers or higher. Of these, 8,000 are thought to be in Kursk region, which Kiev invaded earlier this year. North Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Son-hui, who's visited Russia 3 times within the year, has called the invasion a holy war and promised to stick with Russia until victory. And days before the US election, Pyongyang fired an intercontinental ballistic missile that flew higher and for longer than any previous one. What does Russia's increasing defense cooperation with cash-strapped North Korea mean for the Indo-Pacific, and why is China troubled by it all? Joining us today are Chiew-Ping, East Asia International Relations Caucus co-founder, and Chen Ping-kuei, National Chengchi University Department of Diplomacy professor. A very warm welcome to both of you on the show today. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow should not frighten or concern anyone. It is the sovereign right of both North Korea and Russia to foster relations, he said. Vladimir Putin has neither confirmed nor denied the deployment of North Korean troops, instead citing a comprehensive strategic partnership treaty signed between the two powers in June. The treaty contains a clause committing mutual support in the event that either country is attacked by a third party. Let me start with you, Professor Chen. So the US has called this development an alarming escalation, also a turning point. Is it the sovereign right of the two countries to foster their relations, or is this actually missing the point of why it's so concerning?
So it is certainly the sovereign right for a state to seek help from another state. If they agree, they can jointly send forces to attack another country. However, I think the statement is about the justification of the use of force. I think the Russia side is trying to justify that the use of force, especially the participation of a foreign military in the conflict, is legitimate. And hence the use of force in Ukraine is legitimate, whereas the US and its allies trying to delegitimize it.
Right. Professor Hugh, I want to get your view on that. I mean, should we be surprised at this development, given that there was the signing of the treaty in June?
Right. So the Treaty of Comprehensive Strategic Partnership between the Russian Federation and the DPRK actually stipulates that they are allowed to send military support to one another when the territory is under attack. So be mindful that the Kursk region is actually within Russian territory. So this is the first time a foreign armed forces, which is the Ukraine armed forces, invaded into Russian territory. So this happened in August, so which is just 2 months ago. So the South Korean side actually detected the movement of North Korean troops being trained by Russian armed forces in October.
Right, okay. And Professor Chen, an interesting point from Professor, the point that Kursk is actually in Russia. Mm-hmm. So does that make a significant difference? So this now can be framed as North Korea helping Russia defend itself.
Indeed. So I think the big difference will be if the North Korean soldiers step foot in the Ukraine territory. That would be another big difference. But sending military to the Kursk region and help defending Russia territory is already a significant move between Russia and North Korea. Right. For a very long time since the end of World War II, we didn't see any cooperation like this scale. So we can assume that North Korea also gets something in return.
Right. And so just trying to get to the heart of why the US and its allies are so concerned.
As Professor Chen explained just now, if the North Korean soldiers ever set foot inside Ukraine, that may trigger a kind of a European countries, especially the NATO forces response, and that would mean that US and its ally, especially South Korea, would be compelled to be directly involved in the conflict. So this would mean the Ukraine war would escalate to the World War level, and which is something that they have been trying to avoid for the past 2 years since the conflict started.
So we expect that, should the Ukrainian forces be driven out of Kursk, then that would mean that the North Koreans would have to return.
So this is, we don't know about the details of the dealing between Russian and North Korean. So far, all of that, I personally believe that North Korean soldiers would not set foot in Ukraine, but given the level of escalation, the deals may change.
Okay. Now, Pyongyang possesses the world's fourth largest military at 1.2 million troops. Among these are North Korean elite special forces known as the 11th Corps, also known as the Storm Corps. Seoul says this unit has been training to infiltrate the south in the aftermath of the Korean War, so for many decades. Professor Chen, let me ask you, how formidable is the combat capability of this unit?
Well, as far as we know, they are the better forces, elite forces in North Korea. We don't know their fighting capability, though. We don't know their equipment. So we don't know whether they have the same capability as they have in North Korea. Based on what we see here, it seems that the North Korean soldiers are being used to defend several strategic points. So I think Russia will remain that way.
Right. And Professor Hu, you know, whilst they are elite forces, as Professor Chen said, we simply don't know how good they are in combat. The BBC points out that they do actually lack that combat experience, and also they might not be as well fed as a normal military might be. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, actually, under Kim Jong-un's leadership for the past 12 years, we can already observe that North Korean military is very well modernized. And the video clips of North Korean soldiers training that has been released from time to time prove that they are actually quite well fed. So because there is a need for North Korea to maintain a strong military conventional capability to invade or to continue to be able to threaten South Korea. So this is why this deployment is highly concerning to South Korea, because those elite forces are meant to invade South Korea. So given the fact that Ukraine's offensive onto the Kursk region actually is a turning point for Russia to think about how to turn the situation around, at least to expel the Ukrainian forces out of Russian territory. So given that need, they have to turn to North Korea, and this is a surprise development for all.
So you don't agree with the assessment from Seoul, which is saying that essentially these soldiers are just cannon fodder, you know, for an illegal war?
Yeah, because if you have so many elite soldiers dying in the foreign battlefield, it is very difficult for Kim Jong-un to explain to his domestic audience. And if they are sacrificing so many soldiers in Russia, then how could then defend a potential invasion coming from US and South Korea, which they always mention in their official statements? Right.
So Professor Hu thinks that they, you know, are actually very well trained and very well equipped, as you mentioned. Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, said that they're also highly motivated, Professor Chen. What do you make of that assessment? I mean, there have been many reports talking about possible defections of these soldiers, you know, given this is the first time encountering the outside world. And they're very young men, aren't they?
Right. So, but even though we have these kind of arguments, but I do think they are not substantiated, because for the following reason. First, they are soldiers. They are trained for their loyalty to their leaders and country. So they are less likely to defect.
But this isn't North Korea's war, is it?
Right, right. Secondly, they are in a very strange land. If they defect, they don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. So there's very little attraction for them to defect. Thirdly, we have to recognize that they are being treated better in North Korea than other North Koreans. So they actually get better paid and better accommodation. So there's no reason for them to defect their country.
Right, right. And maybe there's some prestige that goes through that. Professor Hu, you mentioned, you know, that this could be a turning point for Putin. Do you see it the other side, though, that his request for these troops kind of underscores how desperate or how dire the situation is?
Yeah, I think the report of at least 1,000 Russian soldiers sacrificed in the fight against Ukraine. So given that they are also running out of combatants on the field as well. So although I think North Korea is unlikely to be placed on the front line, and they would be actually separated from the other Russian soldiers, for example. So this would be akin to how Putin framed it as special military operations. So another possibility of what Putin could have asked of Kim Jong-un is to provide other new military equipment from North Korea, and that include the anti-aircraft missiles, because Russia is currently running out of that as well.
That's right. And Professor Chen, also exactly that. What appears to be concerning the US and its allies is what the North Korea could get in return for this contribution of elite troops. Do you think that the main gain for Kim Jong-un is the technology transfers, or is it cash?
Well, I think Kim Jong-un will ask something material in return. So based on what we can see and based on what we know North Korea might need, I think Russia can provide North Korea fuel, food, heavy machinery, equipments, and possibly people are guessing that nuclear and intercontinental ballistic missile technology, that's what Russia can provide. However, those are sensitive technology. It is doubtful that Russia will give it away very easily.
Right. But this contribution, as we just discussed, could actually turn the war for Putin. Do you think that Kim will be extracting as much as he can from Putin?
Kim will, but I would say I don't think this aid will turn the tide of war for Russia, because this is actually a weakness in Russia's mobilization strategy. There is no general mobilization order in Russia so far because Putin is unwilling to draft soldiers from main cities. So we can see the soldiers are mainly from rural areas. So having these manpower from North Korea can actually fill that gap. So Putin can continue his war effort. So I think this will make Russia sufficient to fight on. However, it will not guarantee a victory in the battlefield.
Right. Now, South Korea has demanded that North Korean troops leave Russia. And as North Korea continues to support Moscow, Seoul is considering providing military weapons to Ukraine to bolster Kyiv's combat capabilities. It's also reportedly mulling sending Korean translators to help the Ukrainians, which could potentially turn Kursk into a Korean proxy war. So, Professor Hu, why is Seoul considering sending weapons?
So I don't think it is wise for the South Korean government to consider sending troops into Kursk, because after all, it is a Russian territory. Even European and NATO allies haven't entered Ukraine directly to assist Ukraine.
Was that actually on the table? My understanding is that they were thinking of sending translators.
Well, it would be great for the South Korean intelligence to collect more evidence on the ground. So already today, there was a leak photos of the North Korean soldiers being killed on the field. So far from what I read, there is a possibility that it is a side-out operation to scare the North Korean away. So, but we don't know yet who and where those photos are being released and whom are they targeting.
So, Professor Chen, if we could drill down to, let's put to one side personnel, soldiers or translators, but just focus on the weapons transfer. So to date, the aid has all been non-lethal, and now Seoul says it's considering lethal aid. Why?
I think there are two concerns Seoul have. First of all, the war will boost North Korea's capability, right? Not only it will train North Korean soldiers, it will allow North Korea to acquire resources such as food and weapon or technology from Russia. So it will boost North Korea's capability significantly. Secondly, it will
if they die in the battlefield, though, then
yes.
that might be a negative impact.
Yeah, and also And also Russia, they worry that Russia will do the same thing for North Korea, right? The treaty is bilateral. So if North Korea decides to invade South Korea, then Russia may participate in certain form. Although the treaty itself is a defense treaty, it's not an offense treaty. But it is possible that Russia will aid North Korea, and Kim Jong-un will have more confidence invading, launch attack, or threatening South Korea.
Right.
This is what South Korea have in mind.
Okay. Now, in response to the North Korean troop deployment, U.S. Defense Department spokesperson General Patrick S. Ryder emphasized the U.S.'s commitment to support Ukraine, he says, at all costs. However, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says that support needs to be stepped up. Take a look.
І ми чекаємо нормальну, чесну, сильну реакцію партнерів на це. Фактично, це вступ ще однієї держави у війну проти України. Треба займатися цим, реагувати, протидіяти. І не можна давати злу вирости.
Previously, Zelensky said, instead of providing the much-needed long-range capabilities, America is watching. Britain is watching, Germany is watching. Everyone is just watching for the North Korean military to start targeting Ukrainians. Professor Hu, what is holding the US, NATO, the EU back from the response that Kyiv wants?
Because they just want to limit the war just between Russia and Ukraine. So any direct assistance to Ukraine, including troop detachment, would mean the escalation of war. So to escalate it beyond the territory of Russia and Ukraine is something that the European countries has been trying to avoid since the World War II, because this has the highest potential to become the World War III.
Does he have a point, though, that, you know, this is a Russia-Ukraine war and that North Korea has entered this war?
Of course, because Kursk region is kind of like a counter-offensive to what Russia has done to Ukraine in the forms of Luhansk and Donetsk. So this is just a tit for tat. So because they wanted to force Russia to the peace negotiation table, but that didn't happen. And in fact, Russia actually amped up the conflict in Kursk region because they find it unacceptable. It would be a face-losing scenario for Putin as well. So it is in contrary to Zelensky's expectation that the situation has developed to the current escalation.
Right. And Professor Chen, is there any level that we can understand this as being a double standard? Because Putin has obviously threatened, repeatedly of nuclear escalation should allies, intervene directly in the Ukraine war, and yet, there is North Korean troops. Okay, they're in Kursk. But maybe there is a little bit of a grey area in terms of this still being part of the war.
But I think the double standards shouldn't apply to the West, right? Because the West didn't make this threat to use...
No. They are prevented from offering more support or from allowing Ukraine to use the long-range missiles because they are very, very worried about this threat from Putin.
I think this is why the West is very concerned about the development, because it actually forced the United States and its allies to think about how to authorize the Ukrainians to use the weapons they receive. So Ukraine is using this incident as a bargaining chip to convince the U.S. to lift the restrictions. And now the difficult question is going back to the West.
Right. And Professor Hu, do you think that there was any coincidence that this happened just before the U.S. election, the injection of those troops?
Yeah, I don't think so, because I think Ukraine's offensive into Kursk region is beyond Putin's expectation. So to him, this is a priority to be comprehended. So he has no choice but to seek out to North Korea for aiding in this battle. So it shows that it is a double standard, because the way Russia used the word special military operations onto Ukraine is the same way the United States used special military operations onto Iraq back in 2003. So for them, they are trying to legitimize everything they do based on the precedent that has been undertaken by the US and their allies.
I see. Okay. Now, Professor Chen, so speaking alongside their South Korean counterparts, Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, and the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, they said that they had actually appealed to Beijing to use its influence over either Russia or North Korea. But China has yet to offer any public statement on this issue. Why is that?
I think Beijing already knew about this very long time ago. I can assume that...
Even though the foreign spokesperson said they
right.
had no
idea about it.
Oh, really? So you
right.
think that's a lie?
So because it is unlikely that North Korea will send troops to Russia without being detected by Beijing. And it is unlikely that Russia would not inform Beijing about its cooperation with North Korea, because everything North Korea does will involve Beijing, because North Korea can entrap Beijing into a conflict that China doesn't want. So this is a serious issue. So I don't think Beijing will be unaware of it.
So you think their silence is, in a sense, complicitness?
Yes, I would say so, because Beijing has a lot of chances and opportunities to obstruct the efforts or try to convince Russia and Pyongyang not to do it, or at least do it in a different way, right? Give military assistance in a different way, but we didn't see Beijing do anything about it.
Right. And so, Professor Hu, do you agree with that assessment, even though many analysts are talking about, that China would not be happy about this because of the potential with Russian support to essentially cause the next conflict in East Asia? And that's something that China does not want. It does not want a nuclear capable, armed, ready North Korea.
So I actually disagree with the assessment that China is in the know about potential Russia deployment, because the fact that the Treaty of Comprehensive Strategic Partnership between Russia and DPRK is also outside of the Chinese government's knowledge. So when we met Chinese scholars and think tank researchers outside of Taiwan in international conferences, they admitted that they don't know what's going on between Russia and North Korea. So it is also evidence when we read the official news reported by both China and also North Korea. So you will find that from April to August, there is no mention of each other's leaders and also bilateral exchanges between the two countries. So we think that China is really deprioritized in North Korea's policy at the moment, and Russia instead become prioritized in Kim Jong-un's strategy at the moment.
I see. So essentially, Kim Jong-un has replaced Xi Jinping or China with Vladimir Putin and Russia. Why?
So because even though after the pandemic, North Korea has over-dependence on China economically, food and everything, at the moment they still import a lot of food and even basic requirements like fabric and tools from China for construction inside North Korea. So Russia, in comparison, actually provide very little. So North Korea don't depend on Russia for economic support, but now they have a kind of a military cooperation exchanges due to the upgrade of the relationship through the treaty.
As Professor Chen was mentioning earlier, it might come to depend on Russia, though, food, oil, cash. Oil, yes. So maybe that balance might be shifting. Professor Chen, I know you have a slightly different point of view. Could the US use the North Korea issue to kind of create a wedge between Russia and China? Or could China use this issue and its supposed influence over North Korea or Russia as leverage in its relations with the US?
I think this is a very good question. I think the US will definitely try to wedge against Russia and China and North Korea. However, I doubt that will be very useful because my assessment is that China would try everything to grab North Korea, to keep North Korea at bay, to make sure that Kim Jong-un would also depend on China. I agree with Dr. Hu that it is true North Korea is shifting its dependence or shifting its partnership to Russia. And that, I would say, that would make Beijing very nervous or very concerned.
Right. Okay. So essentially, it's in Beijing's interest to keep North Korea dependent upon Beijing.
Yeah, so North Korea actually very much aware about it. They don't like the over-dependence on China, and that's why they are diversifying a way the dependency on China. However, economically, China is actually the core financial and economic supporter to both Russia and North Korea. So this is why the closeness between Russia and North Korea currently enjoying right now create discontent within China, actually.
Right. And very final thoughts, if I can stay on Professor Hu, is is there a bigger picture of why China might be wary of North Korea's military activity or troubled by what Kim Jong-un is doing?
Yeah, because China has been restraining itself from anything that Russia has done since the invasion on Ukraine began. So the fact that North Korea is now extending their activities into Russian territory, China wouldn't want to manage that kind of problem. So I think they would distance themselves away from this issue because this is a deal strictly between Russia and North Korea only. So what China would be very concerned right now is the follow-up action by the US and South Korea, not only in Russian-Ukraine war, but also on the Korean Peninsula.
Right. We're going to have to end it there. Thank you so much, Chiew-Ping and Chen Ping-kuei, for joining Taiwan Talks today. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.